On today's episode of Tactical Tuesday, John and I are going to be breaking down some river decisions with Ace Queen off. So these hands went down playing live poker. That's why we're here in easy hand replayer land, as you can see in the overlay. And welcome to Tactical Tuesday. Jonathan, how are you doing, sir?
How's it doing? How's it going? I think another loose theme. Ace Queen is definitely the main theme in this hand for both of these hands. But I think that another loose theme is kind of just asking the question: Would you have played the river this way? Because I think I did in both hands. I think I took maybe a what would be considered a non-standard line. Who knows? We'll see what you say after you look at them. But again, the main decisions here are going to be my action on the river.
All right. Well, let's go through it then. Hand number one starts out with you having the old ace queen off in the big blind. You're $3,000 deep with the villain. So you are playing 5-10, no limit. So about 300 bigs. The hijack opens to $30. The button calls $30. The small blind calls $30. And now you got a party here with your ace of spades, queen of clubs. So we're at decision point number one with, three callers. And I guess the first question is going to be, what's your impression of the hijack, the dealer, and the small blind?
Reg fish, or reg white belt, as you would say.
All right. So reg opens hijack, and then the white belt calls on the button, and then white belt calls from small blind. So I just imagine here with the two white belts that you're going to be squeezing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely going to be squeezing. All my ace queens in the spot. Yeah, not much else to say other than this is a value squeeze.
Cool. So you squeeze to 18 big blinds. So sizing up with a squeeze, the hijack folds, the button calls, and the small blind folds. So got one customer for 18 big blinds. There's $420 in the middle, 42 big blinds. You've got 2820. You get what is reasonably okay flop. Ace of diamonds, queen of diamonds, queen of hearts. So you flop a boat, and now I guess this is where we start.
Yeah, so I think there's I said that the most of these hands, the biggest decision was going to happen on the river, but I think there is kind of a lot to think about already here on the flop, and just kind of planning the hand and thinking about, okay, I definitely have a hand that wants to get all the money in. What is the best way? What are kind of the lines, the options that I have, and what are those lines? What type of flop c-bet size, or whether I c-bet the flop or not at all. Like how do all those lines start?
Yeah, it's tricky because you have such a good hand that it makes it quite difficult for villain to have a ton of natural continues. They have some probably suited / offsuit broadways, so gut shots, jack 10, king jack, king 10, and then diamond type hands, so flush draws. They're going to have pocket pairs. They're going to have suited connectors. They're going to have some like ace-x offsuit and probably suited as well in their preflop range. So yeah, it's pretty tricky, right? Like, I don't know that. I mean, I guess you could start with a quarter. My preference here is probably to check, but yeah, I'm kind of torn between quarter and check.
Yeah, this has actually been something that I've been finding myself thinking about a lot more because I'm playing live poker, or when I'm playing live poker. And the big difference here is that I think between this hand and this hand happening live and this hand happening online is that at 100 big blinds effective, I would have no problem checking this flop and, just being comfortable with the fact that like all the money can get in pretty easily somewhere down the line. One of the things I find myself thinking about more frequently when I'm playing live, and as you can see here, we're 300 big blinds effective. I'm actually like well covered by villain, so we very easily could have been much deeper. And just thinking about like, okay, do I need to be a little bit more aggressive or be a little bit more proactive about putting money in the pot if I'm trying to play for stacks when we're this deep? And so I think online at 100 bigs, I would have been way more happy to start out with, way more happy to, consider starting out with check. In this spot, do you think being deeper, just sort of necessitates us to start having a C betting range and maybe like a more of a bet range, or even more of a bet range than we would at 100 big blinds effective, just because we need those extra streets of betting in order to get our stack in.
Yeah, so you definitely do. Like, if you're going to bet the flop, then you're essentially saying that you're going bet jam. Right? Like there's no like other kind of course of action once you bet the flop than going bet jam. I just think that the hands that you're targeting for bet jam a lot of times will bet themselves on the flop. Like ace 10, for instance, right? Or ace jack, like top pair would be a hand that you'd be targeting for like 3 streets, some sort of top pair. I think those hands bet themselves. I'm a little bit worried because, yeah, I mentioned bet a quarter, and I think betting a quarter is, again, the standard, but you could also make an argument for sizing up here too, to just go ahead and target their ace X and their flush draws and bet like half pot or 3/4 here on the flop too, and be like, you know what, like I'm going to lose some gut shots here because I'm sizing up, but I'm still targeting like, the ace X, the queen X, and the flush draws by sizing up. So it really boils down to like, do you want to capture the extra bets from their low equity hands? Do you want to make sure that their gut shots see the turn? Do you want to make sure that their pocket pairs see the turn so that they can possibly turn a boat?
Yep.
Or do you just want to go ahead and start targeting the hands that you think will be their call downs, essentially?
Yeah. Start targeting their top end bluff catchers.
Right. And the reason why I mentioned check is because I think like some of their top end bluff catchers just go ahead and bet the flop anyway. So you don't have to place that bet, and you can also get bets from just zero equity type hands. And because of the SPR, like if villain does bet, I would check raise the flop too. I wouldn't mess around. Once they kind of signal like, oh, I'm placing a bet here, I would check raise and then kind of, play turns and rivers accordingly, where if they bet half pot, it's going to depend a lot on like how big they bet. If they bet half, then, that's 210. So I'm going to check raise to like 650-ish, something like that. And then there's going to be 1,700 in the pot, and they'll have like 2,200 left. And then if the turn's a blank, you can check and jam river if turn checks through. If the turn's a diamond, then like, you can bet small or 40% or something like that, and then jam river. So yeah, again, like you obviously want to get the money in, and you have a lot of depth, and the depth makes it to where it's quite difficult to get it in against a significantly wider range of hands, no matter what you do. Like it's just really hard to get it in at this depth.
Yeah, that's definitely the dilemma that I'm kind of foreseeing here already on the flop. Just to kind of go back in game to what I actually ended up doing. I decided to just pick the small bet route and give their, gut shots and, potential pocket pairs as many opportunities to improve on the turn, and maybe even the river, depending on what I think about doing on the turn. So yeah, I decided to, like, one of the things that I'm thinking about here also, like when I consider check, is that I don't know how confident I am that like ace 10 bets the flop, in the button shoes versus checking back. And I think that was like a, kind of like a fear that I had as well, is that like a lot of their top end bluff catchers might just start out with a flop check. Obviously the queen is just going to bet, but that doesn't end up really mattering that much. So anyways, I start out with a third. Definitely.
There's nothing stopping you from betting 600 on the turn too, right? Like 660 in the jamming river. Like you could still make it a 2-street game just by using 2 really big bets.
Sure.
So it's not like you can't, like it's no limit Texas Hold'em. You can get the money in at any point you want to by simply saying I'm all in, right? Yeah. So, you have multiple paths to victory, I think. When you bet small, you kind of have one path to victory.
What is that path?
You're just going bet jam or hoping to get raised at some point.
Okay.
Because like when you choose small here, like when I said overbet the turn, there's going to be like 1,700 in the middle, and they'll have 2,200. So the SPR is set up to where it's a reasonable jam size. It's not out of this world. When you bet 140 into 420 and they call, there's 700 in the pot, and now they've got 200, like 2,600 behind. That's quite an unreasonable jam. And so really the only way outside of ripping like 4x on the river is betting the turn and jamming the river yourself. So like that becomes your primary path to getting the money in.
Okay.
So villain calls, that's nice. And here there's 700 in the middle. The turn's the 5 of spades. You've got 2,600 behind. You're still, you got that 140 from their gut shot region, but now you have to blast. Like you don't really have much of a choice.
I disagree. My plan here on the turn was to keep their range relatively wide, thinking about using a small to medium-ish turn size to maybe even keep gut shots in their range, but definitely flush draws, maybe small pocket pairs. And then my plan here was to bet the turn and then range check the river. So I thought that when I go bet and get called twice, their range is going to be a bunch of top pair weak kicker. They're, ace X bluff catchers, maybe some queen X that's trapping, and then hands that will either be straights, flushes, or brick straight draws and brick flush draws on the river. And by checking the river, I think I miss out on potentially some value from their ace X region. I'm not confident that their ace X calls 3 streets anyway, so not really sure how much I'm missing out there. And I think all the other hand categories bet the river.
Okay, that's reasonable. I like the plan. Let's see how it goes.
So my question is just like turn size. Like how, like, I don't know which direction is greedy. Is it like really greedy to bet a quarter here, or is it really greedy to bet like 600 here? And, given what my plan is on the river.
You have to bet small. Like set up your plan in such a way that you want them to have busted gut shots. So
yeah. I don't think I went small enough on the turn.
I think like 250.
Yeah. I think that's about right.
You went 350, so half pot. Yeah, it's a little
too big. Yeah, a little big. I agree.
You put yourself in danger of them folding hands that you'd like to induce from.
Sure.
And river's the deuce of hearts.
Stick with the plan.
You check villain. That's 2K.
So good to see. Felt so good to see him reaching for chips after a check.
Yeah.
Just praying to fade the snap check back.
Yeah. Jam, and maybe it's good for the old live poker red line.
It is really good for the live.
It is really good for the live poker red line. They fold. So well done, John. Well done. I think
that was really nice. He just snapped at 2K on the river and it was just no sweat at all.
Well done. Good job. Nice hand. Stick around after the break. We'll see what John has cooked up. Days without incident, down to 0.
Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf Program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.
All right, welcome back to this Ace Queen river themed episode of Tactical Tuesday. John looks to be 300 big blinds deep. I see another theme. 300 bigs playing live poker.
This one's only 150, unfortunately. There's a straddle that you can't see it.
I see. Okay. So we have a straddle. You're under the gun with Ace Queen, and you open to 2.5 big blinds. You have the Ace Queen of hearts.
Mm-hmm.
the button calls, the small blind calls, the big blind calls, and the straddle calls. So we have not a family pot, but your dad's side of the family pot.
That's
2, 4,
definitely live
5.
poker.
Yeah, five-way action here with the Ace Queen of Hearts. Any notes on the villains? I guess we'll talk about the villains later. There's too many of them to go through at the moment. We'll talk about the relevant ones.
Mm-hmm.
You get a pretty good flop, 10-7-3 with the 10-7 of hearts. So you flop the nut flush draw, your personal favorite. I'm sure you almost did a touchdown dance when you saw the board. There's 250 in the middle. Villains check to you, and I know you range check tons multi-way. I just can't imagine you range checking with the nut flush draw and over.
Yeah, this is definitely gonna be one category of hand that I can't bring myself to check. Also, I have experimented checking these type of range check, throwing these hands into my range check range, and just found it to be really sort of awkward to play some spots that come up after you check a super strong draw on the flop multi-way. So I've just started betting these hands, and like you said, I am going to start out with the flop C bet. Do you think there's a question of size here? Sort of what am I kind of hoping to accomplish by betting the flop into 4 players?
I mean, what are you hoping to accomplish? You're hoping that everybody calls in the turns of heart, preferably the 6 of hearts. I guess that's what you're hoping to accomplish.
See, this is why we get along, because I was worried that some people would think that I'm trying to fold everybody out.
What? Who would think such a crazy thing? So, you start out small, probably 75-ish, somewhere in that region, like really small multi-way. Yep. C-bet, you bet 60. So basically you went quarter, 60 into 250. The button raises, and everybody else folds. So
yeah, let's talk about villain here for a second.
Sure.
Villain is a extremely loose passive fish, like 95% VPIP. Literally limps every single hand and then limp calls almost every single time.
Yep.
Is very kind of tentative about like aggressively putting money in the pot themselves. So this raise is actually extremely meaningful to me. I do not think that this raise has a hand like ace 10 in it, for example. I think that would be way too much weaker than what I would expect this villain to show up with when they raise the flop.
So it's a pretty easy call then.
Yeah. Well, I'm not folding.
Sure.
I'm not folding.
Well, you're not folding, and you made the argument for not 3-betting. So you only have one option once we eliminate those 2.
Sure.
So you call. Turn is the jack of diamonds, so now you have a gut shot to go along with your nut flush draw, and essentially you're hoping to check, face a bet of like 500 or 600, call, and then river something and jam into their like probably flop set. I imagine is the path. Oh, they bet 380. So
this is what a gift.
Yeah, it's small, which makes it nice. Makes me a little sad that they didn't just pot it, because it's like potting is like kind of the clincher as it relates to like them having like a really strong hand. And it's something that I think when you have draws like this, a lot of times I hear people talk about how they talk about villain having like sets or very strong hands or straights in this scenario on Jack 10-7-3 with 2 diamonds, 2 hearts as like a bad thing. But when you have a nutted draw, you want your opponent to actually have like a set of 10s. You want them to have the best hand they can possibly have so that you can get value on your draw when you make it. Like when they don't have those types of hands, when they have a hand like ace 10 here and you call the turn and then make a flush on the river and you bet and they just instantly fold, that is not the scenario that you dream about, right? You want them to have very, very strong hands here. Like that is ideal. And that's why I said that I would have rather faced 600, right? I would rather face pot, because then it's clinched. It's like, okay, now I know that when I get there on the river, I'm getting all of it pretty much every time. So
This works out though for us in an unexpected way. The 380 is actually ends up being good news.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's not terrible news. A check would be the worst news, right? A check would be like the worst. So the river is the 9 of diamonds. So it puts up a 4-liner and completes the backdoor flush draw. There's 14-10 in the pot. So, I mean, I already know what you're going to do, and I already know what you're thinking, and so you can just let the Tactical Tuesday listener know. I haven't seen this hand beforehand, but I've done enough of these episodes with John to recognize the situation.
So just going back to why I thought the 380 was a gift, I think, like you said, they probably have a slightly less nutted hand than, someone who bets pot on the turn after raising the flop. I think that likely means that my donk jam here, which is what I'm considering, gets through a little bit more frequently than if they had bet pot on the flop. Although this river is so scary, who knows how much of a difference it makes to, pocket 10s or 7s versus a hand like ace 10.
Right.
And so, I think there's, I think that's like one argument, an extra argument for donk jamming here. But I think the real argument here is that it's, given what I said about villain's range and how they just don't have hands like ace 10, I think it's just extremely unlikely for villain to ever show up here with a flush, or even a straight. Don't think there's very many 8x that gets raised on the flop from this villain profile. If they have a flush, it has to be something like 10-7 of diamonds.
8-9 of hearts. 8-9 of hearts could be there.
Sure, 8-9 of hearts.
That'd be a heart. Yeah.
One thing that I would say about this villain is that I'm not confident that villain would raise 8-9 of hearts in position on the flop. You know what I mean? It's like that's the level of like, wow, this raise is a big deal. Like on the flop. That's what I was feeling. And so, I think, it's just really tough for villain to have a nutted hand once the board runs out. With the 4-liner, the weird 4-liner and the backdoor flush that they never have completing. I'm going to be completely honest. In game, I didn't really even think about what I was repping in the spot, or what value hands I have to jam here. I just thought that this river card was just too good for my bluffs, I guess, to forego donk jamming.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to go for it. You got a gift from the poker gods with the backdoor flush completing in the 4-liner that probably wasn't in your plan on the turn to donk rip, but 8 of diamonds, 9 of diamonds, you didn't make your flush, you didn't make a straight, you didn't make a pair, but you got something that's you got a nice consolation prize.
I feel like if you could look at the security footage of my face on the river, you could probably see my thought process on my face where I'm just like, fuck, I never get there, man. How do I miss so many? Wait a second.
Yeah. Just slow down though. You could like start seeing the wheels turning in real time. Yeah. Well, I'm down with the thought and the execution.
And we get the fold too.
And so you jam 2370. And villain folds. Did they show you or tell you, or
no? They
showed
the people next to them,
right?
And wasn't an extreme tank. It was maybe like a 30-second disgusted tank. Show the 2 people next to you the big fold that you're making, and then luck your hand.
Well done. Good job. That's it. I think I agree with your second hand river decision's great. I think the first hand you found clearly the optimal path, and I would have left a lot of money on the table by not betting small and checking the river, but I probably would have checked the flop to start with. So who knows?
Hey, who knows? Maybe he made a sick fold with Queen Jack on the river because he just knows that I never.
No way. There's not a world. They had a busted nothing. They had absolutely nothing. Like, it's possible that they could have had a flush draw, right? Like, check the flop, they bet, I could check raise, and then like find something down the line to still get everything. So it's hard to say how much money was left on the table, but it's also a good signal that they put in most of their stack and folded, which is about as good of a result as you could ask for. So,
sure. Yep.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode of Tactical Tuesday. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. If you have any questions about either hand, or if you would have played them differently, let us know. Till next time.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter at CPG Podcast.